just get going for a while, and perhaps it would be a good time to bring in my colleagues here in the booth with me for some thoughts about this speech. I'm joined here by Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard, Nina Easton, Washington bureau chief of Fortune magazine, Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard, and Juan Williams, senior correspondent of National Public Radio. All are Fox News contributors. Let me turn first to you, Fred. Your thoughts on this speech?
Well, it wasn't quite as compelling as the one last night by Sarah Palin because she was new. We wanted to know about her. We were curious about her. We already knew a lot about John McCain, and the crowd didn't really help him by not being able to distinguish between a regular line and an applause line. They applauded both of them and sort of interrupted him. But there were a couple of things that were interesting here. I mean, we know he's going to go and he's going to shake up Washington. We know everybody likes Sarah Palin. The crowd went wild. But he has stolen a couple of Democratic themes, and we already knew about one of them. That's the theme of change. Sarah Palin talked about it a lot last night. But some of his aides had recommended over in recent weeks that he take up the theme of fighting, that I fight for you. I fought for the surge. I fought the oil companies. I fought the union bosses. I fought for bipartisanship. All these things he fought. And now I'm fighting for you. Now, we've heard Democrats use that over the years. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for the little people and so on. I went through and I was counting how many times he used the word fight or fought or fighting, and I lost count at about 25, and there were a lot more than that. But it's a theme we're going to hear a lot more of.
And it's worth noting, perhaps, that Sarah Palin said last night on that very point that there was only one person in this election who has actually fought for you, and that, of course, she said was John McCain. Nina, your thoughts?
Well, and then he underlines that, I think, by putting Sarah Palin on the ticket, a fighter. To me, it's kind of reminiscent of the Gore-Clinton ticket, where they were both reinforcing each other as these sort of new era, new guys moving to the bridge to the 21st century and so forth. I thought the soaring rhetoric at the end was needed because it really was a big chunk of the speech was kind of a bit pedestrian. It almost sounded like
it was programmatic.
It sounded like a State of the Union speech, frankly.
Which is striking and interesting because Barack Obama, with whom we've associated with soaring record, left that aside for the purposes of his speech in Denver last week and delivered a sort of a meat and potatoes speech about what he would do. It seems to me McCain to considerable length did this as well.
He did. And one of the interesting things I want to just step back, the history we should appreciate for a moment. This, when he went into the fact that this crowd and these delegates and this conservative base was embracing him like this, it's astonishing. And when he went through this whole
these are his delegates, after all. Well,
yes, but I mean the conservative base of the party is embracing him. A year ago, just going back to the speech right here where he talked about reaching across the aisle and reaching his hand out. Last time he reached his hand out, it got bit, and it destroyed his campaign with the over immigration. So I thought that was a pretty astonishing just timing of this. Secondly, just one thing about Cindy McCain, by the way, this was her first big formal speech, and Mark McKinnon, who helped did draft the speech, when he went to look for another speech of hers that had been given, he couldn't find any. I mean, this was really a debut for Cindy McCain as well. Not as well, I should say, but it was as well as Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
Bill Kristol.
McCain presented himself as a fighter. He barely used the word experience and used the word fight and its derivatives over 30 times. I think they've decided that looking back at the elections of 2000 when Bush beat Gore, and 92 when Clinton beat Bush, and 80 when Reagan beat an incumbent president, and 76 when Carter beat an incumbent president, that Americans somehow don't put as much weight on experience as people who hang around Washington and think experience is important too.
And you have the recent example this year of Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think he has decided to be the fighter, the reformer, and the patriot in this race. And in that respect, I think there's a kind of consistency now to the message. This race has changed a huge amount. I guess that's what I just keep coming back to. Thinking about this week, what the Republicans, the Democratic convention was the big story. And it was amazing. I thought Obama's speech in Denver, 85,000 people. I think politically, the Republican convention was more important. The McCain campaign pivoted from a sort of cautious, we're the experienced guys, you can't risk it with Obama, to we are fighters for change. We have the right kind of change, conservative reform as opposed to liberal reform. And it's a much more interesting race. I think a very unpredictable one, but it's really a different race than it was 2 weeks ago.
Juan Williams, your thoughts?
Well, I think that he said early in the speech that really this speech was directed to people who have yet to decide how they're going to vote. And so I had hoped that he was going to say, this is why we went to war and why it was a misbegotten war, and here's why the economy is dragging right now. He didn't do that. I mean, he came out, and I appreciate the soaring rhetoric because I think it really set him apart, and I think this whole atmosphere is celebratory. But when he tried to draw a contrast with President Bush, which is absolutely essential for him in order to win this election, he just mentioned President Bush once and then I think went on and by saying, I'll work for you, I'm not going to work for party, again trying to draw himself apart from the GOP and the Bush brand.
How well do you think that worked, by the way?
I don't think it worked very well at all because he's surrounded by Republicans and the Republican brand here, for better or worse. Then he tried to draw a contrast with Obama, and I think he did better in drawing the contrast with Obama, talking about keeping taxes low. I absolutely loved what he said about schools when he said it was the civil rights issue of our time. To me, that was an honest, straight talk, John McCain, and he spoke to it with a passion that I personally appreciate. When he talked about energy, he talks about, well, you know, we got to drill and do other things. But again, he didn't make a commitment to what that alternative would be. He didn't draw that picture. He talked about national security and said this is a dangerous world. And here's where I think he really played to his strength and did so well. He said, I'm prepared. I know how to protect our country. And, you know...
Yeah, I will draw on all my experience with the world and its leaders, all the tools at our disposal, diplomatic, economic, military, and the power of our ideals to build the foundations for a stable, enduring peace. That's right. Kind of the punchline of all that.
I thought that was terrific. And when he spoke about bipartisanship, again, he said, I have the scars. And I think that was a shot at Senator Obama, saying, you know, I really have been in the pit battling for immigration reform and others, and scarred by his own party.
And I think one thing about that is that there's real truth in that.
There's real truth.
Yeah.
You know, and I wish he had spoken to that with some more passion. But I think when you remember that Barack Obama during his speech says John McCain doesn't get it. And I think when speaking to voters who have yet to make up their mind tonight, John McCain said something really interesting. He said, you know, I know you've been left behind. I know these are tough times for you. I know you have a hard time keeping jobs, finding new jobs, putting food on the table, keeping your house. He spoke about people in Michigan, Pennsylvania, New England. And I think it suggested, you know what, wait a second, he's not out of touch. He's not like some of these Republicans who say the economy's doing just fine. No, he has a sense of what's going on. John McCain, I think, tonight was more real than I've ever seen him. I think we're getting back to John McCain of the straight talk. And he won't talk about why we're in this war, or he won't talk about why the economy's dragging on. Those were problems, in addition to protesters and that green backdrop at the start of the speech. But overall, I'd have to...
That green backdrop was a little alarming almost. Because remember we had that bad outing with the green backdrop earlier in the campaign.
Yeah, so it reminded everybody of that.
I kind of thought, wow, who thought of that? And of course it changed and he ended up with a big blue background. There he is. You notice they didn't have fireworks in this building, so they projected some up on the screen there behind Senator McCain, and it's still going there. And there they go, Cindy and John McCain leaving the stage here. Thanks, panel.